Hi, everyone. Jordan Bateman here. Thanks for listening. What you're about to hear is a hot stove that McLean and I recorded immediately following the BC Liberal leadership vote on February 5th. Kevin Falcon won on the fifth ballot, but it really wasn't close. Falcon was way ahead for most of the night and is the new leader of the BC Liberal Party. So listen to this, and then McLean and I will be back for our regular hot stove show tomorrow. Happy politics. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are live following Kevin Falcon's fifth ballot victory here to win the BC Liberal leadership race. Some will say it's close. I'm just looking at pictures right now. He is with Gavin and Michael Lee and Stan Cho. Ellis Ross is up on stage. Don't see Renee. I'm sure there's Renee. I see her as well. So looks like everyone's up there except for, I guess, Val Litwin, which I guess shouldn't be a surprise, but we can talk more about that in a second. McLean, are you there? McLean is in the chat, but he's probably getting his headphones on. All right. McLean, what do you think?
Hello. Well, not a lot of surprises. Kevin Falcon has been an overwhelming favorite since really the day he announced. Nothing over the course of the past 300 plus days really put much of a dent in that impression. And even, predictions of someone like Ellis Ross or Michael Lee winning depended on them kind of coming up the middle with a lot of second and third place spots on ballots. And I mean, that didn't happen. This is about as clean win as you can have in a ranked preferential ballot.
Yeah. I was talking to Kareem Alam, who is the campaign manager for Kevin Falcon, and worked hard on his campaign in 2011, wasn't in charge, but certainly has learned the lessons from 2011 for Kevin here. He was telling me a couple of days ago that they felt their floor on the first ballot was 41, 42%. And so when they hit 47, the math just becomes overwhelming for the other campaigns. So, yeah, you'll see a lot of pundits out there say, "Oh, it was close. 5 ballots. Oh, it's so close." It wasn't close at all. In this kind of system, which sort of compresses the candidates together mathematically, an 18, 19-point win is a landslide. So, Kevin Falcon, I thought his speech was good. Hit all the notes that you would expect to hit. Called on the other members of the campaign, the different campaigns to join him in rebuilding the party. Lots of good energy. And, I think that's important. I think it's been a rough ride for BC Liberals for quite some time now. And, maybe for the first time, they start to feel like they have a little bit of hope with a new leader.
Yeah, I mean, the next things that'll be for Falcon to sort out now is obviously finding a seat in the legislature. That'll be he's got a lot of jobs ahead of him, but that's probably job number one. I know he'll be in Victoria on Monday to meet with caucus and the staff there, who will be very anxious to see him, I'm sure. And then from there, the next speculation, the next thing we're going to be talking about a lot, Jordan, over the next few months is who is likely to step down, probably, and when the NDP will be willing to play ball and call that election, because it doesn't have to be right away. But that's the next big thing.
Yeah, well, one would hope the NDP would try to expedite matters but that's not the way politics goes. I guess the likely suspects to step down will be Andrew Wilkinson, of course, in Vancouver, Kilchena, and then maybe Michael Lee. I don't know. How happy is Michael Lee these days? He and Falcon, those two campaigns had several run-ins, issues throughout the campaign. I would say those two campaigns were the most diametrically opposed. You do got to wonder about Michael Lee and where he goes from here.
I mean, you never know. When Christy Clark didn't win her seat in 2017, I didn't expect that she would run in the Okanagan. So, I mean, you don't know. I think it will depend on which MLA. Obviously, they need to be in a seat that's relatively safe, or at the very least very competitive. And they'll want someone who's looking to move on to the next phase of their life. I also know that Falcon probably wants to run closer to his home base and in Surrey, ideally. There's only so many seats to choose from, and I guess we'll see.
I think he lives on the North Shore now, but I'll have to double check.
That's true. No, you're right. I beg your pardon.
another one is obviously municipal elections this fall, and special shout out to Gabby Wickstrom, the great mayor who is in the listening to us right now. But municipal elections this fall, Gabby's going to win a landslide. But once one of these BC Liberal MLAs may want to step out and run for mayor of their community, so that could be another option.
That's true. I hadn't even thought of that, but you're right.
Yeah, this is why I get the big bucks. Maybe let's go ballot by ballot here. So, first ballot, Kevin's at 47%, Ellis at under 27, 20-point lead, really hard to make up in this kind of format. Stan Seapost drops off, but of course, only about 100 points up for grabs with his drop. And you just didn't see the vote coalesce around anyone. In fact, it'll be interesting to see the more detailed statistical breakdowns. My sense, though, is that a lot of folks may have voted for 1, 2, maybe 3 candidates, but they quickly started to evaporate from the overall voter count, which is always a problem for these sorts of things.
That's exactly. And when you have a number of candidates like this, it actually makes it very hard to win right away with a ranked ballot. You see people commenting on Twitter, how come it took 5 ballots? It's divided party. But I mean, you're talking about the first ballot, Stan Seapost, there's not a lot of votes on his ballots to go around. It's just he didn't have that much support. I don't know what the percentage was. I don't have it in front of me, but I mean, that's not a very big pie to divide 7 or 6 ways, rather.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. So Seapost drops off, then Renee Merrifield. Again, she was hovering around 3%. Maybe in future iterations of this, maybe you should drop everyone under 5% on the first ballot. But that's just a math geek thing. Val Litwin edged ahead of Gavin Dew. And I think that may surprise a few people who are watching this campaign. Gavin had an excellent team, seemed to be hitting all the right buttons, but Val seemed to edge ahead of him barely, but did hang on. And ironically, Val Litwin, who said he would quit the party if Kevin Falcon wins, it was him dropping off the ballot and his supporters being redistributed that put Kevin over the top.
Yes, that's going to be a final, I suspect, final bitter irony for Val. I'm not in the room. I'm actually in my home office in Victoria. So, I mean, I don't know if Val Litwin was even there. I did not see him on the stream. I certainly didn't see him on the stage afterward. I whatever Val chooses to do next, I hope he's happy about it. And I think, he actually performed very well until the last week in this leadership race. And, he was starting from scratch in politics. I mentioned this in an article I wrote this week. It's that, as far as I know, Val hasn't even so much as, challenged for a nomination, much less a seat. Even Justin Trudeau, whatever you think of him, his last name gave him an unimaginably big head start. And he still started off as a backbench MP.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great point. Like Val comes in, never run for the party. To my knowledge, never really did much with the party. Like I don't recall him volunteering on campaigns or speaking out or endorsing. Deposits himself in, decides to run for leader, and it's a shame. I hope there's some sober second thought there, because I think Val is the kind of person who you want to have as part of the party, as part of a candidate. He understands small business in a way that very few politicians in BC do, or at the provincial level at least, given the fact that he was the president of the BC Chamber of Commerce. You want to keep people like Val Litwin in the tent, and that'll be a test of Kevin's leadership. Can he bury the hatchet with people like Michael Lee of Val Litwin, and bring them in and make them feel like meaningful parts of the coalition?
Yeah, I mean, and it's if you're Val Litwin, he had, to my knowledge, one of the smaller teams, at least in terms of names that I recognized, and as I say, he kind of overperformed. And so, I mean, from a rotisserie baseball point of view, he did very well.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Let's talk about Ellis Ross. Ellis, I think in the last couple of weeks, expectations for the Ellis Ross campaign got really high. I mean, really, really high. And at the beginning, we were saying, we think Ellis might be in second, maybe it's between him and Michael Lee, kind of going back and forth. And then all of a sudden it became, oh no, Ellis is going to win. In fact, I got a fundraising call from the Ellis Ross campaign a couple nights ago, and it was kind of pushy, like, we just need a few bucks to put him over the top, GOTV. I'd like to apologize. I did not make a donation to any campaign, so clearly it's my fault he didn't get over the top because I didn't fund GOTV. But my sense was from that campaign, like they really felt like they were in this, high 30s, maybe on the first ballot, maybe as high as 40, in which case they may have had a real chance to topple Kevin. It just comes down to signing up new members, right? Like Kevin
Yeah.
just signed up so many new members. Plus, he had enough of a brand name with the existing long-term members who are, a lot of volunteers, people who've worked campaigns, MLAs or friends of former MLAs. Like that's a tough hill to get up.
Yeah, I mean, it's again, just from what I watched on the stream and them on the stage, there was no frowns from Ellis Ross. He looked like he was laughing his head off in a good way. I think almost uniquely among all the candidates, he was one of the ones who got the sense for, whether he wins or loses, he's just going to keep going. He's not going anywhere. And so, it's, yeah, you're right that there was a lot of expectations. And I wonder if part of that was just, look, there's been a presumptive favorite for so long. And the perception was he was so far ahead. The only other plausible rival, especially in the last few weeks and months, was Ellis Ross.
Right.
And so, of course he was going to get some outsized attention in that respect. It makes sense. People like a race, but I mean, the perception was kind of right from the beginning. Falcon was that far ahead.
Yeah, just doing some math here. So from first ballot to fifth ballot, so from the first ballot to the final ballot, Kevin went up 5.2 percentage points. Ellis Ross went up 7. So, cut into the lead slightly, but nowhere near enough. And then Michael Lee went up less than 4. So, the Michael Lee campaign was a polarizing one. First there was the incident where some Falcon supporters treated very badly, very poorly, very rudely, and were disciplined, fired for how they treated Michael Lee's campaign manager. So that kind of was the first big issue there. But then it sort of boiled over. It seemed like, Michael Lee's campaign had problems with everything Falcon's campaign was doing. They really pushed the membership sign-up issue. There's a lot of suspicion from some folks, some quarters, that, the court challenge that was struck down today, apparently what evidence was presented borrowed very heavily from Michael Lee campaign letters to the party. So there's there's a sense that maybe it was somewhat tied to that, or at least there was some sort of affiliation there. I'm not sure that's true. May just been a supporter, but very difficult to grow when you've got to be able to pick up second place votes from people. And Michael Lee's campaign seemed to polarize for some reason, and he just did not grow at all.
Yeah, the sense that I had, especially the last couple debates, was that Michael was trying to become the anybody but Kevin Falcon candidate, and to do that, you have to explicitly go on the attack, and for an anybody but Kevin Falcon candidate to win, they have to become literally everyone else's second choice. And I mean, as you were saying, when you're breaking down the numbers, it looks as though over the last 3-4 ballots, Falcon, Ross, and Lee were all kind of, gaining relatively the same amount of points. It wasn't it was the only way Kevin Falcon was going to lose is if he was, first on his supporters' ballots and last or not on anyone else's. And that obviously did not happen.
Yeah, and everyone else is coalesced around one person.
Yeah,
which is the other trick, right? Like, that's difficult. Look, 4 years ago, Diane Watts led on the first ballot, but she led with, I think it was under 40. It wasn't in the
it was right around 40, if memory serves. And someone will correct me, I'm sure, but that was my recollection.
So, and she wasn't able to kind of put together the extra numbers that you need in order to go over the top either. So, this is the rare preferential ballot where the front runner the whole way through actually carried the day.
That's true. There wasn't really a lead change, certainly not at the top, but even, from 1 through 7, it really didn't change that much at all, which is kind of shocking for this kind of system.
And on a night where Pierre Poilievre has announced that he will run for the leadership of the Conservative Party of Canada, and I can tell you there's more than a handful of folks who will probably end up working on the Poilievre campaign, working for Kevin Falcon right now. My sense is they'll be looking at this as a template for how to bring Pierre across the line, because he will be a prohibitive front runner in that race as well.
And I mean, and whatever the numbers are behind the scenes, one of the keys is to make sure you're seen as the prohibitive front runner. And that,
Mm-hmm.
that's the sense. That's what people call you. I mean, every story that mentioned Kevin Falcon, good or bad, in the last year or so, said that he was, the favorite. And, that's whether or not it was true, and it was. The important thing is that that's what people are calling you, and that momentum builds on itself.
Yeah. So Kevin from here goes to meet with the House, or goes to meet with the BC Liberal Caucus. I think a lot of the leadership there have worked with him before. I expect Todd Stone to become very significant. Well, he already is, but even more significant in this caucus. He was someone who was thinking of running for leadership and decided instead to support Kevin Falcon. And wouldn't surprise me if first question period is the Todd Stone show. My sense is that there's some friendship and trust that have really grown there between those two, which is good. I wonder, Kevin will, my sense is he probably won't want to go in there and disrupt everything immediately. Like, take a look at the operation, talk to folks,
Yeah.
maybe some minor critic changes or House officer changes, but who knows? And then there's the question of what to do with Shirley Bond. She doesn't have a critic portfolio anymore because she's no longer the leader of the opposition, but obviously someone that you want to use. So,
well, neither do Michael Lee or Ellis Ross or Renee Merrifield, right? They all dropped their critic roles, and so you're right. There will have to be some shuffling, just on the assumption that some or all of them will get critic roles back. There isn't a deep enough caucus for them to have people that aren't critics of things. But you're right. I mean, it's in some ways it's almost unfortunate that the House is back the day after tomorrow, in that if things would have to change really quickly, and it makes sense that he would want to meet them before changing what their roles would be. So it could be that the first question period on Tuesday looks very much like the last one. You might still see Shirley Bond leading off, if only because Falcon will have just met caucus the night before, in his role as leader, and it would be tough to make that much change right away. Although stranger things have happened.
Yeah, for sure. Ravi Kahlon, NDP MLA, was out immediately with a tweet bashing Kevin Falcon. All the usual, basically the 16 years of BC Liberal power were a complete disaster, and it was all Kevin Falcon's fault.
On that note, I got 3 emails. Bang, bang. I'm looking at my inbox right now. 3 emails, bang, 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 from the other 2 parties. 2 from the NDP. BC Liberals turned back to old ideas. And then the other one is a leader from the past and other things. It's 2 attack emails. The email from the Green Party, first to now, congratulates Kevin Falcon. It's if it was me advising the NDP, you can be gracious for an evening. You can sick the attack dogs tomorrow. It's fine. It's all of your supporters will still feel the same way. We're looking forward to seeing Falcon, et cetera, and so forth. It's just it costs nothing. It's like Falcon sounded a nice tone in his speech, saying, I'll support them when I agree with them on things, and I accept that they're good people who mean well. I just disagree with them on a lot of things. That's perfect. I would like to hear more of that across the aisle in politics, federal, municipal, provincial. I love that kind of thing. You can still disagree really strongly.
I thought having Ravi lead the first attack tweets was a interesting choice, and here's why. Ravi is often rumored as one of those people who may already be putting together leadership ambitions for a John Horgan retirement.
Yes.
You often hear about EB, Selena Robinson, Adrian Dix, and Ravi Kahlon. Ravi also obviously a south of the Fraser MLA.
Mm-hmm.
This is a place where Kevin Falcon in the past has been very popular, and will need to be again in order to turn the tide as far as the BC Liberals' fortunes in urban and suburban British Columbia. So, kind of a clear contrast there. Could be a preview. Of the actual election in whatever year that is, 2024.
That is my odds-on prediction of what actually that will be the 2 is what I actually think is going to happen. So, a lot has to happen between now and then, obviously. Wow. And the biggest one is Oregon deciding not to run again. But yeah, I still think if I had to bet something, that it would be Ravi Kahlon, Kevin Falcon, and Sonia First to now.
McLean, before we talk more about the ballots and the candidates of the winner, we should talk about the format of the night. Um, I thoroughly enjoyed Mike DeYoung and his very self-depreciating speech where he gets up and he talks about how it's a leadership election night, or as we call it at my house, Passover. Took me 3 times to get up on this stage. Very funny. It's the kind of joke that only Mike DeYoung could deliver with that kind of gleam in his eye. So I enjoyed that. You were not a fan, though, of the multiple slideshows.
It's true. One slideshow, fine. Two, yeah. Don't call them videos. But I mean, you were right in one of our text groups. It's just filler, and relax.
I enjoyed how we got through a whole night. Like, big tribute to Shirley Bond for the past year. No mention of Andrew Wilkinson. It's like he never existed. I don't believe there was a Christy Clark or Gordon Campbell mention.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I wasn't paying close enough attention to notice if Falcon's speech referenced former leaders. I mean, if you obviously have to reference the one who's outgoing, which in this case is Shirley Bond. But you're right. It's not mentioning the person who contested the last election is a choice, but we'll see.
So, Stan Cho, Val Litwin, do we ever see them again in BC Liberal land? Do we see them ever running for the BC Liberals, or was this kind of a one and done thing for them?
I have to think Stan Sipos, if you're listening, and there's a good chance you are, my sense is you probably will not run again. That's just my sense. I could be very wrong. Coming in dead last is never fun, but of course, I mean, he can console himself with saying he came in dead last, but in terms of a votes for time spent on the campaign trail ratio, he did okay. And having started so late with Val, I don't know. Obviously, his feelings were running very hot, and he was certainly threatening to leave if this outcome happened tonight. So there is always a hope that cooler heads will prevail, but it would be surprising to see him run in the next election. I could be wrong.
Yeah. Hey, I see Rob Mackay-Dunn is in the chat here. If Rob, if you want to lift your hand, if you want to talk, we'll bring you on. You and I can reminisce about Falcon 1.0 and how much better this leadership race was than the one we got stuck on back in the day. But if you're kicking around and you have a chance, feel free to ask to speak, and we'll bring you on, Rob. Look. The three sitting MLAs, Lee, Ross, and Merrifield, are obviously going to be important going forward to the Falcon team. You build your profile. I know that Renee took a few Twitter beatings from the Jazz Joe Halls and Bill Tielemans of the world, but I was impressed with Renee. I saw her speak a couple of times to small groups. She held their attention. They were rapt. She connected with them with personal stories. Like I think there's some real political talent there.
Mm-hmm.
I think she's been in MLA for a year, right? And
yeah.
She spent most of it running for this job. So I think that there's some lessons to be learned and just growth and development, right? But I think she's someone who has a pretty bright future in the party. And then Gavin, Gavin's team. Like Kevin's team is very businesslike, like working hard. All the campaigns work hard, but Kevin's was very businesslike, very experienced, very professional. They did not stray from their focus ever. Gavin's team was similar, except that they were much younger, I think, and that it wouldn't.
Oh, you've gone mute there. Gone mute.
4 or 5 of those folks end up running other campaigns down the road. Like my sense is there was a lot of talent in the Do crew, and some really interesting ideas as far as how to campaign. And I suspect those will spread throughout the party.
Yeah, I think if Kevin Falcon is smart, he'll sit down with Gavin Dew at one of his earliest opportunities and exactly that. Go over some of the stuff that Gavin tried in the campaign. It was kind of like he was like an R&D center for future campaigns, because you're right, he was trying some really interesting new things that other campaigns haven't tried or even thought of maybe. And so I thought a lot of them were actually very effective. And it's for a party that has been outflanked on the younger demographics, that talking to people like Gavin and making sure that their ideas get get examined and looked at and hopefully copied is a very smart move.
All right, folks who are listening, we're going to let's do a little open line here, McLean. If you'd like to speak, if you have something to say, question, something interesting that you observed, feel free to hit request to speak, and we'll bring you on, and yeah, you can chat with the famous McLean K and little old me. It'll be great. We're heading into session. We have a throne speech on Monday. A week or so later, we have the budget. 2 weeks later? 2 weeks later, we have the budget. It's a steep learning curve for Falcon to get back into this, to get up to speed on all these different issues. You will really be relying on that team.
Yeah, I mean it's almost lucky in one sense, and only this sense, that he's not in the House, and that he can focus in the next little while until they figure out who's going to resign, and when the NDP called by-election, that he can sort of work behind the scenes and organize and get cracking and on some of the files. Now, I suspect that he's actually not going to need as much time as another candidate might. In that he's been a cabinet minister. He's not starting from scratch here. But yeah, he's going to have a lot more time than he would if he was front and center, having to prepare for question period on Tuesday.
Yeah, exactly. Budget, by the way, no stakeholder lockup this year. So maybe I'm kicking around. Maybe I'll call the Falcon campaign, see if they want me to come and help them with rapid response or something. That'd be fun. The things I do. Who knows?
You heard it here first.
Yeah, there you go. Very exciting stuff. Let's talk a little bit about the cost for this for Kevin is phenomenal, right? So, Kevin was in politics for many years, finance minister of British Columbia, does not run for re-election in 2013. Of course, those who will recall 2013, it looked like the BC Liberals were going down to defeat. I don't think that was the sole reason Kevin didn't run again. I think a little bit was, there was obviously some friction with Premier Clark. There was also, he was tired. He wanted to do other things. His young family, a lot of travel, less strain on him. So, he wanted to do something else. He did. The Liberals went on to win that election in miraculous fashion. And he went on to become executive vice president at Anthem Developments, and really sunk his teeth into the private sector again in a way that he hadn't done since, the late 90s, when he was a business consultant working with companies south of the Fraser. So I think it really reestablished in him, how government can be a hindrance and how government can be a help to the private sector. And, kind of identify what government does well, what the private sector does well, and, how those two different paths should maybe, the difference between those two different kind of delivery models. He gave up a lot to do this, to come back into politics. I know friends of his who have said to him, are you crazy? You got a great job, very successful. He's done well at Anthem. Why would you want to do this? Your job now, you're home every night, you sleep in your own bed, you see your kids every night. You're going to go back to Victoria and, I don't know, stay in the Marriott Inner Harbor. No offense, Marriott Inner Harbor, and have the continental breakfast, and it's not glamorous, right? And he's sacrificing, I think, a pretty significant personal income to do it. It shows the depth of passion he has for the province, for the party, and just how important he thinks it is to get this particular leadership race right.
Well, yeah, and I mean that's all magnified by the fact that he wasn't running to become premier immediately like he was in 2011. You're running to become the leader of the opposition party, facing a strong majority with an election that's a few years off, right? So this is not grasping at power, because that power is a long ways off and by no means certain.
Yeah, definitely not. So yeah, it's kudos to him. He's sacrificing a lot to do this, and I do think we saw it in this. Listen, the campaign 10 years ago, the loss to Christy Clark, that was a tough one. It was much closer than this. It went to the final ballot. It was 52-48 for Christy on the final ballot. Again, a little bit wider margin than actually the numbers showed. But that was tough. That was a tough loss for that team. for Falcons core group of supporters. They've been building for that for quite some time.
Mm-hmm.
And he had
and they thought they were going to win.
Oh, they thought they were going to win. Absolutely, we thought that. Yeah. I worked comms on that campaign. I worked closely with Kareem and Marco Dakovic and Rob Mackay-Dunn and Sam Howard. A bunch of people have gone on to much bigger and better things. And it was hard. It was really tough. And we weren't sure. Like, we thought we were going to win at different points. I'm not sure the day of we thought for sure we would win. I know there were 2 speeches in his pocket. There always are, but 2 speeches, and we actually agonized over both. So he had a huge MLA support network. If you recall, Christie only had Harry Bloy.
Yes, right.
For Quitlam. Mm-hmm. For Quitlam loves Bloy. We had 25 or something. Calls in the morning, and they were in government, so you were walking into the premier's office, so you could actually make promises and be able to keep them right away. And it was a bitter disappointment. Christie did a better job at the unheld ridings, calling Revelstoke's riding with 70 or 80 members and calling them each 2 or 3 times to make sure that they felt connected. And those points came back. And one thing I noticed about this campaign is the Falcon campaign was a lot more laser focused on the points and not on just member signups for the sake of signups. And that was the big lesson from that 2011 campaign, and they carried it through.
Yeah, I mean, if you're listening and you're not quite following, basically, it's a long way of saying signing up 2,000 members in one riding in Surrey is not as useful as a clean sweep of 70 members in Stikine in some ways. And so it has to be sort of a support base from across the province, and the system is designed so that somebody can't They dominate Vancouver Island and nowhere else. That's a bad example because it's small. Surrey or Vancouver, and take over the party. And so you're right. It looks like they learned from their mistakes from 10 years ago. And to your point about 2011 versus tonight, it's easier to lose if somebody pulls you aside a couple days earlier and says, "Listen, this isn't going to go the way we hoped." Rather than watching it, the results come in and you had champagne on ice in your suite,
right?
And so so I imagine 2011 was hard. I know a lot of the people listening and know what that feels like on both the winning and losing side, and it is easier when you have some time to swallow it. I know that's what some people think happened with Val Litwin this week, is that finally someone sat him down and just said, "Look, there isn't a path here."
I mean, that's my theory too, but I have no evidence for that. It's just that there seemed to be such a tone shift with Val that something weird happened. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure what. By the way, I'm just checking in on the Wells, BC mayoralty race. I got to see this because Wells is a small town of like a couple hundred people, but they're having a mayoralty by-election tonight, and one of the candidates running is a guy named Ed Coleman, former Quesnel counselor, but Ed Coleman, brother of Rich Coleman. There you go. So I'm definitely curious. Is Ed Coleman the new mayor of Wells, BC? I can't seem to
Will
find
the dynasty continue?
I don't even know if Wells, BC has a website. I can't even find
it. Well, they will now.
There it is, District of Wells. Okay, so you fill some time here while I look this up.
That's a tall order. I'm supposed to just stall while you look up the District of Wells. This is the kind of analysis you can only get live.
Polls don't close till 8 p.m. Dang it.
There you go.
There's 170 people. They need 12 hours to vote. Yeah, I love this province. What a great province.
What did you think of the whole the stream itself? We talked about the slideshows and all that, but just sort of what they were able to pull off. I know that I don't want to call it a gamble. That's not a fair word, but the idea of stretching out this leadership race was that the party wanted a in-person convention to wrap it up, because to me that was a smart thing to want, because the visuals are so much better than an empty conference hall. Obviously, things did not go as well with COVID-19 as everyone hoped. And the risk of a longer campaign, even though the goal was sound, you wanted that in-person convention to end it. You want that energy. The risk is of a longer campaign is that nerves fray and that the candidates start turning on each other and people start to get sick of it, and you can't maintain interest for 300 plus days.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if the party knew back then, 400 days ago, whatever it was, what they know now, would they have opted for a shorter campaign, knowing that, well, you probably won't be able to do a full in-person convention no matter what?
I suspect they would. They would go shorter if they could have. I suspect that, but then again, that may have talked people like Kevin Falcon out of running, depending on where he was at that point in his decision-making process. Listen, it's not just COVID, right?
Yeah.
The irony of doing it, or the fear that must have been going through their minds at the beginning of the day, doing it on a day when the truck convoy rolls into Vancouver and then becomes engaged in like pitched protest versus protest battles with the bicycle folks there. I mean, first of all, it doesn't get more Vancouver than that. And second of all, look, traffic's always snarled in Vancouver on weekends. I'm not sure you'd be able to tell the difference, to be honest. But like, they must have been petrified that these cyclists were going to keep these trucks there at the outside of Sheraton Wall Center, and they'd storm in or both sides. Like, think of the disaster scenario that could have happened.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
Could have much worse, but yeah, no, they should have done a shorter race. This is too long. What did 300 days or something that Gavin do was in the race? Like, it just much too long, and I think the bar was too low for candidates. So, what doesn't get talked a lot about behind the scenes is that basically around every debate time, there's a fundraising threshold that candidates have to get to in order to be in that debate. And it's a way of making sure that, heck, we need to elect a leader who could actually raise money. And that's something the BC Liberals have fallen further and further behind on the NDP on in the past few months and years. So, but they kept the threshold very low. So a Stan Cho or a someone drawing dead, like a Renee Merrifield, there's no impetus for her. There's no like testing point for her to drop out of the race. We can't get the money, so now we need to drop out and support someone else. That would have also helped kind of speed up the process as well.
Yeah, you're right, and that is an aspect that never gets talked about. But it is a way of, I was going to use the word riffraff. I'm not going to do that. It's a way of making sure that, I mean, look, this is a senior role we're talking about, the head of a major political party in a large province, and that if you can't raise money,
Her Majesty's loyal opposition.
Exactly, and if you can't raise money, then it's a disqualifier. It just is, because in today's climate, it's impossible to just show up and be handed the keys and think that everything's going to run smoothly. So you're right. I mean, raising the bar is probably a good idea, although there will be people very upset about it. But that's just part of the job.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the timeline is. My sense is Falcon will want to have a convention maybe next year. Get BC Liberals back in the room together, probably vote on a name change, some branding, some high-level principles.
God willing, it's an in-person convention.
Yeah. Well, can you imagine within a year from now if we're still doing this?
Well, I remember when we all shut down, we were all talking.
2 weeks to bend the curve.
Well, exactly. And then
see you March 26th, 2020.
Some of the hot stoves we did in those first few days were like, well, this will be, a month, 2 months, but by the summer, everything will be fine. And it's been 2 years. So yes, I can imagine it. And I really hope that's not the case.
Let's hope that it is not. But, the Wonder Convention, get some energy going. And listen, like Falcon, the party needs a complete rebuild. There was lots of talk of the name, some high-level principles, stuff like that. Yes, obviously that needs to be done. But the grassroots have turned brown. We need to start like turn gray. Really, it turned old more than anything else. Like they just died out. We need to reinvigorate the party. We need to start highlighting candidates now for the next time around, getting the right people in the right ridings. Local candidates can swing a vote probably as much as 6 or 7 points.
Yeah,
and in some
with some exceptions, but yes,
yeah, and in some ridings, like that will be the difference. And you got to go out there and find the person who can win in those ridings. We've somehow got to survive redistribution, where the NDP have made it very clear that they don't really care about rural BC's massive geographical disadvantages. They don't really care that an MLA has to basically represent 1/3 of the province if it's in the north. They just want seats in the Lower Mainland where they think they can win. So redistribution, we joked around for years about Gracie's finger in BC politics. We're about to see Horgan's hands all over this one. You have those issues that have to be dealt with. You've got to rebuild the party apparatus at BC Party headquarters. When our friend Emile Scheffel stepped down, I think they've been in very much caretaker mode since. There was a tribute to Don Silversides tonight. He was a former president of the party who became a vice president, then became president again because the president stepped aside and then passed away. That's, all that apparatus needs to be fixed. Fundraising is a mess, and their butts kicked by the NDP. You got to go out there and raise money and build confidence in donors that, your plan is working. It's not a small, and then you got to convince the media. The press gallery is about as skeptical as it can be about the BC Liberals still. We're 4 or 5 years into the NDP government now. Some of the shine has worn off, but not all of it. You've got a press gallery that, frankly, Keith Baldry is the chief political correspondent, I believe, for Global BC, but never talks about politics anymore, only talks about COVID.
It's true.
You've got to basically reignite the interest of reporters and media to get that story out. And, all while holding the NDP to account and coming up with policies that are going to resonate with British Columbians to get you elected in 2024. So this, enjoy the night, Kevin Falcon. Tomorrow's going to be like, what's the old saying? First the swearing in, then the swearing at. That's what you always say at these when politicians take a new job. So
such a rosy and optimistic outlook from you, as I think people expect.
It's
the one thing, the counter to that is that, yes, to everything you just said. There's not a word you said there that's not true, and it's an enormous amount of work on several fronts. The counter to that would be when John Horgan became I won't even say ran for it because he had it handed to him. It was basically an acclamation. Became the NDP leader in, I want to say 2015. It was seen as hopeless. The NDP themselves saw the next election as late as 2016 as completely unwinnable, and that they were looking at like an 8-year plan to regain relevance and a shot at winning. Obviously, that did not happen, and John Horgan has won 2 elections since. It can happen. It requires a lot of things going right on your side, and yes, some things going wrong on your opponents, but things are going wrong for the NDP government lately on a number of fronts, and it's just a question of getting ahead of them. I think that getting ahead on some of these issues that are getting worse in the province, things like affordability, things like crime, things like overdose deaths, and the price of housing, getting ahead on some of those issues will actually solve a lot of the other things you got to work on, including things like fundraising.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. If you are the parent of a child with autism or the grandparent of a child with autism in this province, you're not in any hurry to write a check to the NDP government, given what they're about to do to your child's services, that you've pieced together and built specifically for them. They know better than you, essentially, is what they've said. We know better than you what your kid needs. And that will never be a popular tact with any parent, let alone with with parents of children with autism. And, Falcon did work on this file years ago as a Surrey Cloverdale MLA. In fact, some of the very key movers and shakers in the children with autism community, the ones who are really been adept at putting some political pressure on the NDP for this decision, are folks that Falcon worked with in the mid 2000s. And those are the kind of issues that he's going to have to really seize on. And they're great because they run counter to the brand, right? Like Ravi Kalon's out tonight saying, Kevin Falcon's uncaring and unfeeling and he hates everything but money and blah, blah, blah. And he, hurt the poorest of the poor and all of that. But families with children with autism, like supporting them flies against type for that. Really, you say that, Ravi, but we're the ones out there standing up for these parents with children who need more help than most. Like that, it's a great issue, a great kind of counter thing. And it has the sidebar of being the right thing to do, which is always the nicest thing in politics when the smart thing to do is also the right thing to do.
Yeah, and the fact that, as the NDP never got tired of saying, the BC Liberals were there for 16 years. And so all of the things that weren't going well, forget all the things that were going well, but the things that weren't going well, they could point to the problem and say, well, the problem is them, and they don't care enough, or they like it this way, and then we're going to fix it. And well, on some of those things, that just plainly has not happened. the units of houses being built, the overdose deaths, the cost of houses, that kind of thing. It's some of that, will do better because we care more narrative is already kind of falling apart. And the key for the BC Liberals will be to make sure that people think that, well, they actually do have some ideas and solutions, and it's not just a hopeless situation that none of them can figure out.
Yeah, no, exactly right. Okay, well, should we wrap up?
I think so.
There are hospitality suites, I'm told, at the Sheraton. So I'm at home in Langley, so I don't go out there. McLean and I were invited. The BC Liberals very kindly invited
That's
us
true.
down to broadcast live from there. The tech stuff that we just can get our minds around, like how to actually do it in a way that would add value. So instead, McLean and I decided to just stay home and.
Yeah, we could talk to you all on Facebook Live, having paid for a cameraman, and the advantage is you'd get to see us, and we're very good looking.
That's true.
Or we could stay at home in our sweats and do this more or less for free in the Twitter space, and this way I get to stay home and plan for my son's birthday party tomorrow. It's win-win.
Exactly. My son has a hockey playoff game tomorrow. It's so very exciting. Actually, what we should try to do, McLean, is let's try to reach out to some of these candidates and see if they want to come on for like a longer debrief of their campaign.
Absolutely.
Like I'm curious. Like I'm very curious what a Renee Merrifield, a Gavin do learned out of this experience. Maybe we give it a few days to let the pain kind of subside.
Oh yeah, let them all have they've all earned the right to crack open a cold one tonight, and give them a few days to chew on it too. And also, it's some of the reflection will happen over 24, 48 hours, and you'll go, oh yeah, okay, that was something we could have done better next time.
Yeah, look, the benefit of this is none of them were so close that one change would make any difference.
Yeah, it's true.
Maybe Gavin squeaks ahead of Val on a ballot, but that doesn't, like, they were so far behind the Falcon campaign that like it's not going to be like Kevin and his team 10 years ago, 11 years ago, pondering like, wow, if only we had done this, if only we'd gone there, maybe we could have swung those few hundred points.
You're right about that, and that's actually been one of the interesting things about this race. Is it's not like in previous races. I'm thinking of someone like Sam Sullivan, who ran and was, he knew that he wasn't going to win. He was running because he had some stuff he wanted to put out there, and he thought this was a way of getting those ideas out there, and that's fine. Or someone like a Moira Stillwell before, where this is how I'm going to advance my profile. I have don't actually think I'm going to win. The remarkable thing about this is outside of Stan Sipos, all of them really thought they were going to win from talking to them. At the very least, they never got their guard down. Maybe Gavin would say on occasion, look, it's important.
They all thought they were in third.
That means winning a lot of the time, right?
And if it just breaks the right way, and you're like, well, we had one candidate who, was one of the ones who dropped off, who called us and started asking about, transition plans. Like, how do you think the MLA is going to react when I win? Oh, what? Probably with shock and awe because none of us believe it could be possible.
And this candidate was neither Kevin Falcon nor distant second place Ellis Ross.
No, it's one of the ones that dropped off the ballot.
Yeah.
So you're like, well, and we're trying to, you're in the press gallery, so you have a different job. Mine is honest broker in the BC Liberal Party. Like, yes. Sure, call and I'll give you advice. It'll be bad advice and weird predictions, but hey, maybe it'll work for you. But it was weird. They all thought they were in third. Every single one of those campaigns felt like they were in third place.
Yeah, but third with like a path to winning.
Yeah, exactly. Third with a path, and just I never saw it. Once I saw the Falcon membership numbers come in, like, oh, this one's over.
Yeah, well, especially in the first that first ballot, it was 47% on the first ballot. It would take.
But once signups came in, like there was a point in this campaign where I thought Ellis has a plausible path here.
Oh yeah,
and then
absolutely.
Then the membership sign up numbers came in, and it was like, and once it was clear Falcon signed up 60% of the new members, a number by the way which no one disputes. I was like, well, it's over, and you never heard another Ross prediction from me again after that, right? Like you just look at the numbers and you go, the guy's going to be strong with a lot of longtime members, and he's brought in all these folks. That's how you win these things.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. We will reach out to all of the camps.
There's one other person we should make a note to reach out to. I don't know if he'll do it, but I want to talk to Marco Dakovic.
Okay.
So Marco is a numbers cruncher, maybe one of the best ones in the province. And I know he was working on the Lee campaign. He worked on the Falcon campaign 11 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no one who I will trust more to give me the breakdown. So what will happen is the party will probably at some point release to the campaigns the really in-depth numbers, riding by riding numbers and votes. And you'll be able to see, that's where we kind of figured out, oh, that's what happened to Falcon. Christie won the unheld ridings by such a wide margin we couldn't overcome it. And, we'll look at ridings held by MLAs, the MLAs who endorsed, did they deliver their ridings, deliver the next door ones? The Falcon campaign said to me 2 days ago, Kareem said, one of the things that he was most impressed about was this time the MLAs are delivering their ridings. And 11 years ago, obviously they didn't. Falcon had the lion's share of MLAs, and Christy Clark, I don't even know if she won Burquitlam. But, it's Kareem, that was something the Falcon campaign learned from last time. Okay, it's not enough just to engage the MLAs. You actually got to kind of walk them through the process of getting this done. And, tonight he won by almost 19 points. Clearly, it was mission accomplished.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And I mean, is it wrong that when you talk about, releasing the detailed numbers, that my first reaction was to go, can't wait.
Well, this is why you need look, you and I aren't the world's greatest mathematicians, I don't think. I'll speak for myself. I went into journalism at the beginning because there would be no math. But, like I said, folks like Marco Kareem will have a numbers person as well who we can engage as well and get some intel out of that. But, this will be kind of the fun part, is deconstructing these numbers.
Well, exactly. I mean, and that's when you get down to it, that's what politics is, right? It's numbers, it's votes, it's who can move them, who can bring them. And it'll be fascinating to see who delivered what. And, on the negative side of things, who didn't.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, huge congratulations to Kevin Falcon, to his team, Kareem Alam, the MLAs. Well done. Trevor Halford, we should mention as well, a South Surrey MLA, rookie MLA, who really did a lot of the quiet behind the scenes work for Kevin Falcon's campaign. I have a lot of time for Trevor Halford. He's a good dude. So kudos to them. I hope they're celebrating tonight. And looking forward to seeing what the Kevin Falcon era of the BC Liberal, soon to be renamed party is.
I guess that's the other big issue we're going to have to talk about over the next year. But
can I call it the new era, or do I have to send $1 to Gordon Campbell?
Or is that the name of the party, the New Era Party?
The New Era Party. And I think the New Era was 2001, so I don't think we can go back to the New Era. The new era.
We'll do a Twitter space one of these days where it's we just discussed the party name.
Exactly. Let's workshop this. All right, that's it for me. Anything from you?
No. Good night, everyone. And you're right. Yeah, congrats to Kevin Falcon and his team. And the work begins tomorrow morning for him. That's as we laid out. There's a lot to do.
I hope he goes for brunch first. Have a nice brunch, and then and then get to work.
And then get on a ferry.
Poor guy.
He's got to be here on Monday.
Oof. I hope someone reserved him a room at the Marriott Inner Harbor. He'll be crashing on Todd Stone's couch. All right, that's it. As McLean would say, blah, blah, blah. Happy politics. See you all on the Hot Stove on Tuesday.
See you then.